Hey everybody, welcome back to Winamac Attack Hockey for this week's NHL update. I am Dom DeBomb, joined by my partner in crime, Jake the Snake Armstrong. If you are all new to the channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button for more NHL news, street hockey gameplay, and much more. So, Jake, how we doing? It's been another week of hockey, my friend.
I'm great. We had the trade deadline this week. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about everything that went down.
Awesome, man. Well, let's jump in. Our first piece of news is NHL history. Patrick Marleau, longtime player, has tied the NHL record for most games played at 1,768 games, tying Gordie Howe. Man, this is awesome.
Pittsburgh Penguins legend Patty Marleau has played more games than 5 NHL teams. Those teams being Vegas, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Columbus, and Nashville, which Nashville started playing in 99 or something. So Patty Marleau's been around a long time, to the point where I think I saw a stat, he's played with or against 37% of all NHL players ever.
That is remarkable. That's over a third, and the league is over 100 years old. That's crazy.
That's insane.
Well, as we know, he's probably going to break that record here coming up shortly, so let's get ready for that. Our next piece of news is also having to do with the NHL record books. The Boston Bruins, as a franchise, has scored 21,000 goals now, which they are the second team to do it behind the Montreal Canadiens. Jake, that's a lot of goals.
That is, and it's good. They're an original six team, just like Montreal. But I'm actually interested to know who's had the most goals against, because they've had a lot of time to score those goals, which gives them an advantage. But I think a team like Buffalo may have them beat in the goals against category. They get scored on a lot.
Oh, man. You just... poor Buffalo. That's all I have to say about that. All right, moving on to the next news that came out this week. A little bit, more on the sad note. The Coyotes raised the banner of Leighton Accardo, the 9-year-old super fan who passed away from cancer at the age of 9. Jake, how do you think the hockey community is going to respond to this?
I think it's great that all teams, they try to do things for their community and see these kinds of situations and recognize these kids who are in these unfortunate situations. But it's good that they can do this and give them some spotlight. I know it really affects the players when they do pass away, so you just got to look out for Arizona, maybe say a prayer for them, and just hope they can pick it up as the season continues.
Yeah, for sure. Thankfully, they were able to catch a dub for him the night that they rose the banner.
Yeah,
all right, so... Oh, go ahead. No,
that's okay.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to some injury updates that are going on in the league. First, we have Elias Peterson for Vancouver. He is going to miss the rest of the season. And Jake, for a struggling Vancouver team that had some higher hopes at the start of the season, how does that affect them?
That's an absolute win for Vancouver. They're going to miss the playoffs regardless. They're so far behind at this point. But it's good for the draft lottery odds. They could win the lottery this year, get some more depth on that team. They're already a young team. They can add a top prospect, get even better, keep the rebuild going, because they've got young guys. They're not losing anything by missing the playoffs. So this is a win in my book.
Yeah, and I think, too, for Elias Peterson, he hasn't had the best of seasons, as we've seen from him. He's kind of been a superstar and just hasn't really played like it this season. So maybe it's good for him to get healthy, spend some time away from the game, refocus, get ready for next season.
Right, get a quick reset.
Yep. All right, so our next injury is a huge one for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Steven Stamkos. They're going to be without their captain at least until early May, maybe longer. Jake, how does this affect the team, especially with having Kucherov being out this long too?
A couple years ago, you might have said the most iconic duo in the league was Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov. But now, most iconic duo is Steven Stamkos and the injured reserve. The guy is made of glass. He probably misses more games than he plays. But I think it's more important for Tampa to get Kucherov back because they've proven they can win without Stamkos. He came back last year for 2 minutes, scored a goal, and dipped. and they still won the Stanley Cup. So I think it's more important for them to get Kucherov. Stamkos would help, but they don't need him.
Yeah, they're a team with a lot of depth. They've shown that throughout the season. They can win without Stamkos, without Kucherov, and that's frightening for any other team.
Yeah, just the threats go down the lineup all the way from offense, defense, no matter what line it is, you've got to watch out for them.
Mm-hmm. All right, so in other news, over in the Western Division, the Avalanche have run into some COVID protocol issues, and they will miss their next 3 games. Jake, how do you think this might affect them as they get closer to the playoffs?
They're going to have to really jump back into things quickly because we've only got so many games left of the season going into the playoffs. They're going to have to get warm, get their lines going again. Hopefully there's no lingering illnesses from it.
Yeah. All right, so last week we had talked about a lot of trades that had happened right before the deadline, but there were a couple more trades on the day of the deadline that were really notable, and one of them being Taylor Hall being traded to the Boston Bruins. Jake, what were the details of the trade, and what did you think?
Okay, so it was Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar going to the Boston Bruins in exchange for a second-round pick and Anders Bjork. And so far, the trade's worked out for Taylor Hall, who has 2 goals in his first 4 games. So he's helping out, contributing offensively to a team where, other than their top line of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak, they didn't have a lot of help. So that's huge for them going into the playoffs. They could use that. And for Buffalo, they get a pick out of it. I'm sure they would have liked more.
Yeah, I mean, you said second-round pick, so I mean that's still pretty good, especially for Buffalo that's going to have a lower pick in the draft. So I think both sides definitely went out here, and I think Taylor Hall is probably a lot happier over in Boston.
Right, but as an MVP candidate for a few years ago to get traded for a second, kind of insulting.
A little bit, especially because of the next trade that we're going to talk about. The Capitals acquired Anthony Mantha from the Detroit Red Wings, and they gave up quite a bit for that. Jake, how do you feel?
Okay, so the Capitals get Anthony Mantha. We know he's a good goal scorer, and he has put up 4 goals in 4 games for them. But going the other way is Jacob Vrana, who is already a solid guy in that lineup. He played mostly on the second line. They gave up Richard Panik, who was a depth guy. He was in and out of the lineup this year, who's not the biggest loss, but they also gave up a first-round pick and a second-round pick. That's a lot to give up for a top 6 guy.
Yeah, if you were the GM in that case, would you have tried to just get Vrana for Mantha straight up there?
I don't know if I would have given up Vrana at all, honestly. If I was going to give up some assets, if I'm the Capitals GM, I might have gone for some more defenders, maybe a really good defensive forward, but Mantha's not that guy.
I see. Honestly, looking at it from more of a positive note here, I think Anthony Mantha, maybe the GM was thinking, hey, this guy, he's got a lot of game to him, and we're going to push for the Stanley Cup this year, and we're going to go get it, we're going to go win it. And I think that's the mindset over in Washington, and maybe that's what provoked him to make this trade. All right, so now that we've gone through all the news, let's jump into our standings. As of right now, as the playoffs continue to inch closer and closer, there's a couple weeks of hockey left in the regular season. So here's where we're at in the Central. The Carolina Hurricanes have the lead with 62 points, followed by the Florida Panthers at 61, Tampa at 60, and then the 4th place spot's going to be interesting. Nashville, Dallas, and Chicago, all within a couple points of each other, and they're going to play, all 3 of those teams are going to play each other in these next few weeks. So things are getting dicey over in the Central. Keep an eye there. In the North, Toronto, no-brainer. They lead it. They have 61 points, followed by Winnipeg, Edmonton, and then Montreal. In the East, we have the Capitals doing their thing. They are still on fire over there at 62 points, followed by the Islanders at 60, the Pittsburgh Penguins at 59, and the Boston Bruins at 56. So all 4 spots there seem to be locked in, but the Rangers are only 4 points out. Don't count them out quite yet. Then over in the West, we mentioned Colorado having some COVID protocol issues, but they are tied with Vegas for the number 1 spot at 64 points. Minnesota has 57, and then Arizona and St. Louis are fighting for that last spot with 45 and 44 points apiece. So keep an eye there. Those two teams are going to be duking it out. And it's going to be exciting as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. All right, so, Jake, key players to watch. Who do you got?
All right, so I've got a couple Blues players who I was sure were going to be traded at the deadline. There were several rumors about them. First up is Mike Hoffman, who was a rental this year. And as it stands, the Blues are not in a playoff spot. So why keep this rental player if you might miss the playoffs? So they're taking a big risk by keeping him. He hasn't really fit into the lineup. I think he just hit 10 goals earlier this week, which isn't what you want from someone who you got for pure offense. And as far as Vince Dunn goes, I personally like him. I think he's a great player. But Seattle is knocking on the door. The Blues already have Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, and Justin Falk that they'll need to protect. So Vince Dunn is that extra man. He's the odd man out. And he might end up in Seattle because the Blues didn't get rid of him here.
Interesting. That'll be something to watch. Let's see. When will the expansion draft be? Do you know?
Like June, I think. It's coming up.
All right. So still a couple months out, but something to keep an eye on, especially, like you said, with a team that's right on the verge of a playoff spot. All right. So I got two players for the week. My first one is Patrick Kane. Obviously, this man is a great player, phenomenal player. But the reason I have him on my watch list is because Chicago's fighting for that 4th spot in the Central. And a lot of their odds to make that playoff spot is going to be on Patrick Kane's shoulders, who quite frankly has been struggling to put pucks in the back of the net recently. I don't know why or how. He's assisting a lot of other goals. He's just not scoring them himself, which is a little bit out of character because he's known for doing both. He's the jack of all trades, and he's been playing really well defensively. So I think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to miss or make the playoffs based on how Patrick Kane plays. Yeah, Jake, what do you think on that?
I think that the trade deadline could have really affected morale in that locker room. They're right there on the cusp of a playoff spot, and the GM says, no, we're selling, we're committing to the rebuild, we do not want to make the playoffs. And that's going to say a lot to a locker room who's trying their best to make a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, their fans want to see it. I mean, it was a Cinderella story from the get-go, you know. The Hawks had little hopes at the start of the year, and boom, they're fighting for a playoff spot since a couple weeks into the season. And then all of a sudden, they sell at the trade deadline. Like you said, yeah, that has to hurt for the players.
And Kane has been a hard candidate this year, so for you to give up on him this late into the season, there might be lingering effects. Maybe he says, okay, if Chicago's giving up, I want to be somewhere else.
Yeah. We'll have to see, like I said, how this is going to play out. And I think it all depends on if they make or miss the playoffs. All right, so my second player to watch we mentioned earlier because of a trade, and that is Anthony Mantha. He was traded for what some argue as to be too much. Some argue that he's going to be a great player for the Capitals for time, who knows how many years. And he's starting to fit in quite well, scoring 4 goals in 4 games, I think it was. So for a team that's making a Stanley Cup push, I think he's someone to keep an eye on, especially because they gave up a lot for him. So Jake, as we close, are there any more concerns, comments, or anything that you want to bring up?
I really just think the fight for that last playoff spot in the West and that last playoff spot in the Central are going to be key points to look at as we move toward the end of the season.
All right, my friend. Well, it's been another week of hockey. Let's jump into this next one. I'm Dom DeBomb, and that's Jake the Snake. We'll see you next time on Winnemac Attack Hockey.